Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the latest edition of the Jake's Take with Jacob Elyachar Podcast. I'm your host, Jacob Elyachar, the chief content producer and writer of jakestake.com, a pop culture entertainment news website. If you're listening to us on our audio platforms, please give us a 5-star review. If you're watching us right now, stop what you're doing. Please give us a thumbs up and please subscribe. I am very excited to welcome our next guest today. He is a former Marine and former pro wrestler, but you may also recognize him from his Stand on Road Rules and 2 seasons of The Challenge. And he's also a stand-up comedian. Please help me welcome Dan Walsh to the podcast.
That's an awesome intro. That is by far the most energetic and professional intro I've ever gotten on a podcast. So right away, you're batting 1,000, Jacob.
Thank you so much, Dan. I appreciate it. Seriously, I'm competing with the likes of Rob Cesternino and Challenge Mania, and I love both of them to death.
Mm-hmm. They're good, yeah. I mean, I love Challenge Mania. I honestly, I've been friends with Derek for a long time, but I always knew about it but I'm like an old man, or I was, as far as not really getting into podcasts or anything until late. I was so late to the party. But finally, during the pandemic, it was when, I did earlier when he had, Derek had his earlier podcast, I would do those. But when the Challenge Mania really took off, man, I was I was out to lunch in a lot of ways with podcasts, but then they were great to have me back during the pandemic. So it was it kind of reintroduced me to all this fancy stuff that you kids are doing nowadays to entertain everyone.
Awesome. And I also got to give and all kidding aside, I want to give a sincere thank you to Challenge Mania and to Scott Yeager, who's an honorary podcasting mentor of mine, for actually having Challenge Mania Laugh in Kansas City. And that's how both of us met. So I want to give a proper shout out to Scott and Derek and to Rob, my big brother podcast role models.
Was that your first time meeting them in person? Jacob?
I've seen Scott back in 2019 in person at the Challenge Mania watch party before the whole world turned upside down. It was for War of the Worlds too. And then I got to see Cara and Polly. I have a photo of Polly that's on Instagram. And then I was also there at Wes's Challenge Mania special that he did the grid with Brad, with Mark, with Naya, with Maya. It was with Tina. It was a fabulous time.
It sounds like a heavy-hitting lineup.
Yeah, I cannot forget Jarrell or Naya or Tina, because I would love to have all of them on my podcast, and they would kill me if they listen to this or watch this.
Would it? I'm gonna make sure. I'm gonna message all of them.
Oh God!
And I'm gonna be like, listen, what? But don't let them know, because I don't want it to actually kill you. But I'm gonna message all of them. I'm gonna harass them until they do. How about that?
Okay, I'm sorry. Well, I don't want to get face a hall brawl with Jarrell or Brad or Mark. No.
I'll tell them to take it easy on you. You'll be all right. All right. Stay low.
And same with Derek as well.
Yeah.
All righty. So let's get started with our conversation. So when did you get interested in performing, and how did that passion evolve into the desire to pursue a career in the entertainment industry?
So you said like performing in general?
Yes.
Being a kid that wouldn't shut up and always was, I think it was kind of natural when I was a child. I was just an extrovert, and I was always interested in talking with other people or having a good time with them, interacting with people. That's always how I was as a child. And my mother was a performer. She liked to sing and everything. And so it just kind of naturally fell in. It's I would see my mom get up and sing at parties and all that because of how she, she had talents and people wanted to. And so in me as a kid, it was always if you had a gift of any kind, whether you were funny, entertaining, anything like that, you were supposed to use it to entertain people, whether it was at a party or whenever people are, so that was always my, I guess my take on it. And, that got me in trouble too. I was a class clown in school, and I definitely didn't use it when I was supposed to, but it followed me everywhere. Even Even when I was in the military, like I remember on our convoys up, this kind of like I was new on our convoys up to Iraq, like we would have these downtime and I would literally get up and just do impersonations. I would impersonate my chain of command and even they would let me. It was like, like colonels and that coming and be like, okay, I want to hear, and you could do it. But it was one of those like, they're like, you better do it when I'm here. Don't ever let me catch you doing it. So I was kind of given a lot of leeway anywhere I went because my dad, I always thought it was, charisma or natural. And my dad would always say it was just that I was full of BS. That was his way of always, that's what he called charisma because he's just a quiet guy. Like, so he just thought anybody that could talk and interact with people was just like the equivalent of a used car salesman. But I just always had an ability to be entertaining and to, I guess, in certain ways, not seem harmful about it in the right way. So yeah, it followed me all the way up to the military. And I was just always just fascinated by entertainers, a lot of different kinds. Even as a kid, I was kind of like, as a little kid, I watched Johnny Carson. Like, my dad was like, "I don't even know how you know what that guy's talking about," but I would stay up. I'd fight to stay up to watch Johnny Carson, or I would fight to stay up to watch The Three Stooges. I'd watch Charlie Chaplin movies. I'd watch, and I was a huge pro wrestling fan, obviously. So everything I saw, I impersonated. So I guess even before I had like a conscious understanding that I wanted to entertain, it was just naturally where my personality went. And I love when people get joy out of it. I think there's always this subconscious thing with me where it's like, if I can take people outside of maybe things that they're struggling with in their life for at least 2 hours, or something like that, an hour or something like it, that's a great gift to give to people. A mentor of mine when I was in pro wrestling used to say that. He said it in a very crude way, because that's often how he spoke. But he's like, "Hey, man, like the way I see it is, these people work 9 to 5 throughout the week. They got BS happening in their homes, family sickness, all this other stuff. So when they come here, it's our job to make them forget all of that's outside the door and just let them have fun for 2 hours. And that's our job. Us that like have this talent or us that have pursued this, that is our job." And that message, whether I had words to it or not, was always kind of my belief growing up. So that's what led me into always pursuing avenues of entertainment, like which would be later. I mean, I did it naturally, but I mean, as a kid, I did more competitive sports. And it really wasn't until, God, I was senior in high school and I went to pro wrestling school that I started to actually pursue, I guess I would say like professional level entertainment. But I did always enjoy, I wasn't a theater kid in school or anything like that. It was more just something I did socially. But yeah, the pro wrestling industry was the first time that I like organized entertainment, but it's always been in my blood my whole life. So did that answer your question, or was that a whole lot of rambling that didn't lead anywhere?
That did answer my question, and I do have. First of all, I got to add, thank you for your service.
No problem, man. They paid for all the plane rides and everything. Nothing came out of my pocket. Pretty sweet deal.
Awesome, and also
Clothes were
I gotta
free.
say, I gotta say this. I can't believe, like, if I was in there and I would feel so lucky for you, because if your sergeant major or anybody was hearing your impressions of them and they were off site, I know you would get a whole lot of burpees, a whole lot of punishment.
Okay, so this was like my early experience in the military. Is first off, if they think that you have it easy whatsoever, like in life. So like if you go into boot camp, if you're, maybe a good looking kid or you're in shape, or they could see that there's some it factor that has made life that possibly easier for you, they will right away trigger you. Like they'll go right for you and torture you the worst out of everybody. Because the way they see it is these guys who have probably been picked on in high school or faced a lot of adversity, they've already, like, they've experienced, sadly, mental torment and that. So anything that we're going to do it's not going to be as effective. But these guys over here who probably had it easier and have never heard any like they're going to go right for you. And I'm not saying that my childhood by no means was what they thought, but by the time I got into the Marines, it was like I'd grown. It definitely was a different story. Okay. And I definitely looked like Johnny football player or Mr. Letterman jacket. So it definitely, the beginning was the opposite. It was more of like me just catching it because I looked like somebody that didn't ever catch it. And that's why even myself, whenever I got into these circumstances, I was not ready for these men to go, okay, go ahead. And you know what I mean? It's one of those, like, you go to do it, but then you're also like, is this a trick? Like, is this gonna, but I learned real quick, if they tell you you can do it in front of them that one time, but don't ever do it again. And don't always, because if you don't, you're going to get, I had a guy, I think I was at that time in E3. So I was a Lance Corporal in the Marine Corps, and, the colonel that I did the impression of, because I ever catch you doing that without my permission, you're going to be in a lot of trouble, private. And I was like, I'm a Lance Corporal, sir. And he goes, not if I catch you doing my impression outside of my presence. And so even when they let me, it was a right away turnaround and just a reminder of, listen, we just let you do it, but don't get cocky, don't get arrogant. Like, I ever catch you doing. But also, in a lot of times, they knew there was opportunities where we were really stressed out and really scared, and they also knew it could build morale. So I also think that they sacrificed their own egos to build the morale, which is also kind of why I got away with a lot of stuff too. So I don't want it to make it sound like I was just Mr. Ballsy and I would just do it in front. I was definitely given permission, but and there was definitely extenuating circumstances that probably let me do it more than anyone else would be allowed to. But it was, oh, trust me, they still let me know that. And you kind of got to. If you give a guy an inch, you almost have to hold something else over his head to go, if you try to take a mile, it's going to be worse. Like, you will only take this inch. And trust me, I saw that loud and clear. Like, I was that's where I also think I got away with it too, because I was always the guy that didn't go too far. I was very humble in the fact that, like, okay, I understood. This is a one time. You never do. And then every other time I was overly respectful to show them that I wasn't getting arrogant, because I know they were watching. So yeah, it was an odd. Every time I tell people that story, even people that have been in the service, they're just like, what? And I'm like, trust me, man. It shocked me too, because you just don't see high up, especially officers allowing that. But also, I think they oversaw the fact that we were walking into an environment that was terrifying, and that they kind of had to go outside of the norm in order to make sure that everybody was in the right mindset and was morally staying on and staying sharp. So I really commend them too for seeing that as more important than maybe presuming this like aura of the tough leader. So I mean, a lot of that I give to them too.
Absolutely, Dan. I want to talk to you about from 2007 to 2010. So that's a period of 3 years. Mm-hmm. You decided to compete on the legendary MTV competition show Road Rules, which led to 2 seasons of the challenge. So why did you decide to audition for Road Rules over shows like Survivor, Big Brother, or Amazing Race, or even The Real World?
I did audition for The Real World. That's how they picked Road Rulers. They would really? So basically they would cast, back in the day they would cast. So whatever Road Rule season or Real World season they had coming, they would do one mass selection. And Dunbar Merrill would basically be like, okay, this person might be better for here, or this person might be better for there. The first show that I was ever approached about when I made it to that finals was Real World Australia. So it was like, in my mind, I thought I was going to Real World Sydney. But and I later on I would find out from Tori Hall that was kind of the same discussion they were having with her. But then Road Rules was coming back for like one final resurgence. It had been a couple of years, and they wanted to bring it back and like kind of finish it off. And they were like, would you like to do it? Now, guys, I was never a reality TV person. Like, to be honest with you, I didn't watch Survivor. I didn't watch a long time ago when I was a kid. I did grow up on Real World. I remember the first season. That's how old I am. And I always liked the Real World. I watched San Francisco. I watched, I couldn't believe that I watched, a man die of AIDS, on TV. It was like, there was a lot of it. So I did know, and Road Rules. I remember, in fact, one of the first people that I recognized when I went on Road Rules, because I didn't know anybody, was Mark. Like, I knew Mark Long, you know what I mean? And like, there's certain people I'd run into and I'd be like, oh shit, I know you. Like, it was neat. But I was not a big reality TV person. So how it came, it wasn't I was against it. It was just, between being in the military, between wrestling, between all the stuff I had going on, I just wasn't watching much TV at all. But I had, I knew, in fact, in the whole reality TV world, to me, Survivor, all that stuff was kind of a copycat of the Real World and Road Rules, and because that was what I originally knew. So that's why I didn't really go for that. What had happened was basically is as the years went on, I would date girls that loved that show. So that's when I would kind of catch up. And I would look at it and kind of like, it looked fun, don't get me wrong, and it was entertaining, but I would never get into it. One time I was living with a friend of mine, and his fiance loved the shows, and she kept watching it. And I would always do anything I could to just upset her, like in a funny way. And I was like, all this show is a bunch of drunk idiots getting and just yelling at each other. I can do that. And she goes, oh, yeah, well, then why don't you send in a tape? I said, you give me the information, I'll send in the tape. And she did. And I made like this 10-minute tape, and it just kept going from there. And to be honest with you, I kept waiting the entire time for it to stop. Like, I was like, there's no way they'll ever pick me. Even at one point when they told me I got to the next, they're like, aren't you excited? And I even told her, I said, at one point, you guys are going to smarten up and get someone that's much better for this show. Because, like, I just didn't believe I was, like, an entertaining prospect at all, but it kept going, and it kept, like, and then eventually got to where I'll tell you what, even we showed up. So all the decisions, it was weird. In the beginning, you would get a first call. And it'd be months. You get a second call to follow up. But then the time spans between each of the calls would get shorter and shorter. And it was really like the whole, you got on the show and you need to be in New York next week. It was literally that short. So we showed up to do the launch special. And I think that's when it kind of connected, where I was like, oh my God, this is really happening. And so it started off as a dare. But I'm not pretending I've never seen the show. I didn't know the show. If I was ever going to audition for one of the shows, it would have been The Real World of Road Rules, because that was the only reality TV thing that I was, that I was a fan of in that. And even though I had like lost track. So yeah, it started off as kind of a dare with my, and which is funny because when I got the show, they kicked me out. They're like, you got to go. You can't stay here. Because like you would have to leave for months. So they're like, yeah, so I had to move in with another friend, but it was much to their, it all started off as a joke. None of us ever thought I would make it that far. None of us ever thought I would get picked. And so I think when I did, everyone was kind of in shock, including myself. And that's why I think I think in the first season, like, or at least in the beginning, I was very mild-mannered because I always thought, I'll never make it on the show because we had to pick crew. I was like, I'll never make it on. And then I did not realize how much voting would go in my way. So that's my thing. I never thought I'd make it. I never thought people would even care. And I never thought people would care as much as they did to continuously vote me and get me. So it's like, even when I was on the show, it was kind of like each step of it was like, is this really happening? Is this really like, so that was kind of my whole first experience with Road Rules, was just kind of the entire time not believing it had happened and not thinking that I could ever make it on. And, but looking back at it now, it is really funny. But the season was great. And it was the way they did it, I think, was easier. I mean, I still kind of lost my mind on it because like anyone who gets followed by cameras and is put in stressful situations is going to kind of like lose it. But it was fun. It was very fun, but it was definitely a big the first introduction to, hey, people are filming you, people are editing your life, and you're just gonna have to watch it without any control, whatever they put out there, which is definitely, I think, kind of contributed to me losing my temper at times. But yeah, that was it. That was the pursuit, man. I wish I had like this wonderful story how I was the little engine that could, and it never. But like, in all honesty, I sent it in not thinking I'd hear anything back, and they just kept calling back. Like,
I gotta say, Dan, but that's incredible that you're a part of that. One of the things that I noticed a lot and seen that because of Paramount's popularity of the Real World Homecoming and the Challenge All Stars, there's been lots of rumors of circulating if there was an All Star version of Road Rules. Would you, if Nuremberg and the powers that be came to you, said, would you be interested in coming back? Would you be interested in doing Road Rules All Stars?
I would do Road Rules 100%. I would do Road Rules before I would ever do a challenge again, because I really did I thought Road Rules had, it was fun. Like, it was like, even people didn't believe, like, okay, trust me, our season was kind of cut and paste because of what they were trying to do. It was kind of new, and there was a lot of mistakes made, and trust me, they learned from them. But the excitement of not knowing where you were going and you were driving to the place and you had to start putting it together as you were going. And this is like still in a way where we weren't as, the internet wasn't as, I mean, it's not like, I mean, it was still there, but it wasn't nearly as like fast and like, available as it is now. So I remember we had like ask.com or something like that. So you could Google certain things, but there wasn't like, I think nowadays there's all these different resources, Reddit pages, all this stuff that can kind of give you little hints to things. Like if you put in a region, but with us, man, it really was, we didn't know what we were going into. And instead of like trying to put everyone against each other, you had to work as a team. And that's more or less what I'm into, man. Like the one thing that I would lose my temper with or lose my kind of just my interest with in it right away was the whole point of putting people against each other. Like you gotta think, I'm a military guy. Like it has to work. Like anyone can divide and start fighting with each other. That's the mark of a narcissist and an idiot. But for everyone who is like different to work together and accomplish something, that's more up my alley, man. I don't want to see failure. I don't want to be the one that introduces it. I want to be the one that takes something when it wasn't supposed to work and makes it work. So I felt Road Rules, although our season had some elements of that where they tried to mix it up because they wanted to take cheap shots and like, here is the thing. They didn't trust their own formula. So they kept bringing in other things that they thought were popular from the challenges and they ruined their own season. But in the beginning, when it was just us having to work together to accomplish a goal, I love that shit. I will do that all day with anyone. I don't care if you are a stud. I don't want you to be a stud. Like I didn't like the military is not a bunch of studs. Okay. Like you had guys joining that were Johnny computer nerd who probably couldn't even do one pull-up, but like we would all help him so he can do 10. And you would watch somebody just accomplish what they never could accomplish. There is nothing that is more validating. There's nothing that's more valuable than to teach someone something. You know, the whole give a man a fish, feed him for a day, teach him to fish, feed him for a lifetime.
For a lifetime.
Yes.
Yes.
That to me is the most gratifying thing. And I don't care if people think I'm being cheesy. That is, in my life, I've learned to validate moments more than money. I don't care about money. I've been poor. I'm fine. Right. I've gone days without eating. I've slept on a riverbed before. Like I don't value that. Thank God. Something that my parents did, rather accidentally on purpose. That's why I was never good at the challenges. I never could get motivated at just like me getting money. Cause it was like, I'm not going to die. I'm not fighting for I'm fighting for materialism. And in the back of my head, I hate that. So back to what you're saying, Road Rules, I would love to get rid of all the BS, go back to the original formula, and let's make a group of people that are very different have to work together to accomplish something. I'm all about that.
I'm okay. I gotta say this. If Mark, if you're watching this, Burnham Murray, if you're watching this, please get Dan Walsh immediately on the phone.
Mark has met me numerous times, and Mark never knows my name each time. So I can guarantee you that's not going to happen. Mark always does it, hey, and then I'm like, Dan. And this is like, we're talking over 12 years. This man does not remember me. There's something about me that like nobody really like. There's like a few every once in a while. People are like, oh my God, I love that guy. Or people are like, who? That's kind of my effect on. Or maybe there's a couple of people like, I hate that guy. He's a piece of trash. But that's kind of my effect on people. You either remember me and love me, or you quickly forget about me. But I can tell you, Mark does not. That's like, every time people are like, why didn't you ever go back? I was like, dude, nobody in that whole organization wants me back on or even cares enough to put me back on the minute I quit drinking. And in all honesty, I don't care to go back on. Like it was kind of something I look back now and it's like looking back on like day camp or summer camp or something like that, where it's great memories. And you remember fondly and you smile, but also they're like, would you want to go back? And I was like, fuck no, I don't want to do that. But I don't think Mark would. I don't even think Mark knows who I am. This is an argument that me and Scott and Derek have all the time. They try to tell me, oh no, and I'm like, and Abram too. Abram has no. I said, Abram, they don't. What's funny is Abram. I have to remind him that we were on shows together. We did 3 of them together.
Abram?
Huh?
You have to remind Abram that you guys were on shows.
There's times where I have to remind Abram that we were on the same seasons. Like that's how not rememberable. Like there's certain people that do. Don't get me wrong. There are but I'm easily forgettable for some reason. I don't know why. As far as like people know me, like the other guys, but they don't know what they remember me from. But I guess I'm just very easily. I've done all 3 of my shows with Abram, and there's literally times where we laugh, where I'm like, "Yeah, I was there, Abram. I was on that show." Oh yeah.
Oh God, guys, what is wrong with their memories? Because from the time that I saw you on that Challenge Mania stage to now, you are memorable.
Yeah, I would say in comedy. Yeah, I don't know what it is about. I don't know what it. I also think maybe my seasons weren't the most watched or anything
We
like
got
that.
to
But
talk about
trust
those
me.
seasons, by the way. That's a perfect segue because I got to say, even though I'm going to be totally honest and upfront with you,
Yeah.
I got into Challenge when Paulie and Natalie and Davon were on. So
Okay.
that's how new I am. So I'm a little bit green. But
Okay.
however, from what I researched and from watching Challenge Mania, and even my other friends, Mike Lewis, and also Dylan and Paige, I have to give those guys a shout out as well. Paige would most likely to, and Dylan chilling with Dylan, and then Mike Lewis, and also the fabulous Drew Angelman, one of the best encyclopedias of Angel Cake Entertainment when it comes to challenge. Without their knowledge, I would have known that the challenge that got the island, which was one of the most polarizing seasons in show history in Cutthroat. So, what were some of the similarities between those seasons?
Which one? Cutthroat and the island?
Yes.
Nothing.
Nothing?
The island, there is nothing. I guarantee you, I don't care how much they try to compare them to other seasons. The island, there has been nothing since. There was nothing before it, and there's nothing since that is anywhere near it. Other than the fact that it was a challenge, there was eliminations and there was money at the end. There was just nothing. I mean, our caloric intake was super low. Even I know they had the one where they went into bunkers, and it was like supposedly close to that. They still did not meet the calorie deficit we had, or excuse me, the low calorie intake we were having. A lot of health things came out of that, and I think they really took a stab at something. And you sometimes when you take a risk, you don't think of everything through, and you're kind of left with the mistakes. But I will say I don't think there's anything as far as that experience. What they did 5 weeks in a remote part of a Panamanian jungle. We were literally given fish and steak that was unseasoned, and chicken, and even the steak, I'm pretty sure it was horse meat because you could chew it. It was like bubble gum. It never dissolved. You never could swallow it. And rice, unseasoned rice, and we were all under 1,000 calories. There was
Wow.
people a day. There was people that literally when they came home, I think it was Jen had to get some kind of like procedure done because literally she wasn't producing or something with the enzymes that break down food. Like people were getting flesh-eating like bacteria on their skin. There was a lot of things that happened. How I wasn't dead, I don't know. Because my massive alcoholism, like it was bad. I drink easily 2/5 of whatever hard alcohol they had. And I was also I always say this, had I not gone through like sleep deprivation and like food deprivation training and kind of hard training in the Marines prior to that, I would have been a dead person. Just with the alcohol, the lack of calorie, like it would my blood should have been pure acid and all my organs should have shut down. Like I don't know how I did it, but you tell me any season they want to pretend is close to that, and I guarantee you, if you give me the elements and the elements we were in, I'll tear it apart. Meaning, like, it's not gonna be close. And I know they pay certain people, like Johnny was on both, and I'm sure he's gonna like make the is it War of the Worlds? Is that the one within the bunkers? Because
That
we're
was
the
total
opposite, man.
madness.
We're the
Total
opposite.
opposite.
Yeah, like I'm literally I stopped watching after mine. So I don't know anybody past it. Like other than if it gets brought up in other but I met Paulie. I knew Cara Maria. I was on Cara Maria's second show, which was Cutthroat. But no man, as far as the island, I'm sure whenever people are watching it, I totally understand that we weren't doing anything. There wasn't a lot of challenges, there wasn't anything, but I don't think they also realized the amount of physical deterioration we were going through because of the food and how much we weren't allowed. Like everyone thought, why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do that? It's like we weren't allowed to. We were like we had strict rules. We basically just had to sit there and rot. And like like I said, I'm not saying they did that on purpose. I think they just didn't think through a lot of things. There's a lot of dangerous elements that, other than when we got there, they were, because we're in an ocean. As we're in an ocean, you can't control an ocean, right? We're out there all the time. So, like, sharks are there, crabs, all that stuff's there. You have caiman inside the lagoon. We had a boa constrictor that lived in the tree right behind where the women were sleeping. These are all things that were real, that were happening. And then, like, yeah, lack of food, and that starts to go into your, biochemistry. You're gonna stop sleeping well. And then you're gonna mentally start kind of losing it. And a lot of us did. And a lot of us did a lot of shit that I don't think we would ever do in any other circumstance, right? And I would include myself in that.
It'd be cancel culture for everybody involved if it was on today.
If they ever aired the dailies of half the stuff we did, I guarantee you, everyone would think we were terrible people, including myself. Because, like, honestly, now I'm a grad student for, clinical mental health therapy, but it's like, Freud and Jung always talked about the shadow. All of us carry the worst parts of ourselves somewhere in the subconscious. But because our morals and how we're raised, we know how to keep that where it needs to be and keep the good where it needs to be. But whenever you're in a state where you're kind of not 100% controlled in that governor, you're going to watch the worst come out. So when you are malnourished, you're not sleeping, with me, massive alcohol, your behavior is going to be something that you don't even recognize. And honestly, post that show is one of the reasons I went to rehab. Really saw that I had a problem and changed my life. And I credit those shows for that. Had you not put me in that circumstance, had you not let me see a side of myself that I never wanted to see again, and that you probably couldn't have shown me unless you put me in that environment, I wouldn't have made the changes I need to. So in a lot of ways, it sucked, but in a lot of ways, I'm like, the island as an experience, I am very grateful for. It saved my life. And that's where I'm always like, as pissed off as I can get at MTV, as mad as I can get about certain things, I always say they saved my life in the end. Because they were having talks with me about how my behavior, my alcoholism, all that was more concerning to them than a lot of things that they've seen in the past. And we both know, if you go back, there are some characters, okay? The fact that on my first night I was so drunk, Tanya had to take care of me. There you go. That shows how bad. But the island, back to it, it's like, yes, maybe it was not the most exciting challenge to watch, and I totally understand that. But as far as an experience, I guarantee there was nothing they've ever done that has tested the cast members as much as that one did.
I think they were trying to be like Survivor.
They were, but they didn't give us any weapons or tools to actually do what we were supposed to. So we just had to sit there like we were refugees. That's what I felt like. We were POWs. They had to drop food for us because the knives they gave us were dull. So whenever we were trying to, like, do the fish, they were dull. We didn't have enough room to actually make, like, sundials. They would come to us, and you could tell a lot of this show was developed by people who have never actually went out and done any of this. With the exception of, like, Justin Booth and his crew who were military veterans. But there was a lot of directors that would, like, say things like, you should just, and it's like, I can tell you're a film school kid and you don't know what the hell you're talking about. And I think those guys, that's why the challenges they used and the eliminations were really cool and really unique. But I think, like, there's also people that were involved in it that didn't really know what the hell they were talking about. They knew what they wanted, but they didn't really understand the specifics of how to create it, because you can't give people no tools and expect them to go out and do things. You can't give people that have zero training, with the exception of one guy, which was me, and I was a drunken mess that was a shell of my own self. So it wasn't like I wound up teaching everybody how to pro wrestle one night. That was it. That was like my contribution. Oh, and I showed Johnny how to knock rust off by using rubbing alcohol and peroxide of one of the rigging parts of the boat, because I learned that with cleaning rifles and shit. But other than that, nobody knew anything. Like, I didn't even, like, I probably could have been much better, but I was a shell and an idiot of myself. But yes, they were trying to be Survivor, but they didn't do any of that. They obviously didn't think. And then when we got there, you got to remember, the challenge members have known each other longer, and there's long-term beef. So you put them in an extremely stressful situation, you now have people that have a history. This isn't just they just showed up and they got mad at each other for 3 weeks. These are people that have known each other for years, and there's deeply rooted problems and serious problems that, once again, nobody heard about. Because, yes, and trust me, with how today's political climate is, that would have been huge. And that's all. I'll leave it at that. There was a huge thing going on there that they were trying to keep from coming out, and one of the cast members kept trying to expose, and they were really trying to hide that. And I think once they seen that behavior, they tried to put the brakes and control everything else. And I think in the end, just like with Road Rules Heroes Revenge, it ruined the end of the, you know what I mean, the end product as far as visually. But trust me, if they ever do a documentary, I hope to God they don't, because they'll show things that I'm not proud of. But you'll see things with everyone else too that you wouldn't even believe it. And I think it just wasn't something that you could put on reality television. It was too much. You know what I'm saying? So that's why I think when I tell people, like, when they're like, "Oh, that show kind of sucked," it's like, if you only knew. And I hope you never find out. That's kind of my thing.
I plan to watch any of The Island. I do not plan to watch any of that. I am going to trust your word on it.
I think there's parts, I think if you go back, there's parts that are really interesting. But whenever people are sitting there going, why didn't they do this? Why didn't they do that? Trust me, there is a rhyme and a reason on why they didn't do it. And everything you're saying, they thought of. But there is a real reason that couldn't happen, because when you put people in dire situations like that, complications will arise that are unprecedented in that environment. And that's why I don't think they ever did it again. And I think they tried to recreate it when they were on the bunkers. But maybe they kept food from them, but I guarantee you I went from 215 pounds to almost 160.
What?
Yeah. So I doubt. Now, granted, I was drinking like a fish and probably destroying my own body, but the amount of weight that I lost was ridiculous. And I've never seen that anywhere else. I would put that damn near. Okay, I'm not saying it's Naked and Afraid. Please don't say that I'm saying it, but it's closer to that than Survivor. Put alcohol-induced maniacs in a version of Naked and Afraid, and that's closer to what The Island was than Survivor.
Okay. All right, so I think we're done talking about The Island, because the thing is, I would love to learn more about Cutthroat.
No problem. This is your show, sir. You tell me what you want to know.
So I know The Island is a totally different ballgame, but could you, for someone like me who's a little bit newer to the Challenge universe, what was Cutthroat like?
Cutthroat was really cool, because so Cutthroat was, I would say, the first time that I walked onto a production where it was my first experience with how very organized things could be. Right. And it really was, man. I think I took part in 2 experiments, and that's kind of my experience walking into the whole procedure. So when I came into this one, and it was really like, as you would see a challenge, like, it was all set up. They did a great job. It was what the challenge production does best. And so we walk into the Czech Republic, and it was just neat. I believe it was the first time that they tried this dynamic with 3 teams. So you didn't want to be the odd man out, and you picked the teams, but we had to run. I remember everything was just a surprise. Because in mine, I ran up in dress shoes because I had flip-flops on, because we flew, and we got there in the middle of the night. We got on buses, and we're driving up, and literally they get us out of a bus in the middle of the small town square in the Czech Republic, or Czechia. I'm trying to keep up with the times. And TJ's sitting there, and they literally just got almost like a flashlight thing on him. And he's and they don't show this part. They edit this part out of the show because naturally, I don't think there was good enough lighting or anything like that. But people forget that TJ really is an element of the show. It's not just for television. He really is that messenger. And maybe all of his moments aren't always on the show, but he really is the referee and the messenger in a lot of ways. So he showed up in the middle of it, and we get out and it's raining, and he's like, okay, basically get all your stuff. You're going to run all your stuff up and just go. You're basically going to run. Follow this road until it ends. And it's a race. The challenge starts now. And so I remember I didn't have any other shoes, and I pulled because it's dark, and I just had dress shoes for some reason.
Oh my God.
So I grabbed them, and I put dress shoes on. I'm like, dude. And all I'm thinking in my mind is I'm about to get eliminated because we don't know if there's an elimination or not. They basically have let us know that if we don't, this race is going to be, there's going to be dire consequences. So you have all your luggage and stuff, and we're running up this dark road in the Czech Republic. We're in a foreign country. We don't know any, and all I can see up this hill is fire and like a dilapidated building. So we're running up into some like intense, and part of me, okay, so as much as the fear element's coming up, dude, I'm getting excited because I'm like, this is like effing awesome. I think like the part of me that's like is a small part of me that's like the adrenaline junkie in the military vet is like, oh, dude, yeah, this is it. This looks terrifying, and like I want to know what this is about. And then we finally got up there and we realized the last place people are the ones who are going to pick the teams.
Oh no.
Yeah, so they start picking teams, and the funniest part is like I had been out of it for a couple of years, and there was a whole new group. You know, like the fresh meat kids that come in and all that, and there's a bunch of people that I never had been on a show with the exception of like, you know, Johnny, Derek, and Abram. But like, oh, Paula, excuse me, I love Paula. I can't believe I keep forgetting. But what I'm saying is none of them were in the picking the teams thing. So I'm literally in my mind going, dude, none of these people know who I am. And in the back of my mind, I'm like, dude, I thought for some reason if you weren't picked, you were eliminated right away. And so in my mind, I'm like, none of these guys know who I am. Like the captain's like, you know, you're just getting paranoid or whatever. And I got lucky, man. It was like they wound up, I think Abram ended up with Siobhan, and Siobhan wound up, and Abram told her to pick me. So I kind of came up.
Luckily, Abram was watching your back.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, Abram knew me from the island. Abram knew me from, like, I think Abram forgets our time on Cutthroat, but I do know he knew us from, like the island. We definitely remember each other because that was just an intense situation. But so, yeah, we get started, dude, and you're in this, like, gulag looking thing, like black dirt. Like, they really did a great job, and you felt it, man. And then we eventually went up to the house, and the house was like this villa, and it was amazing. And we found out later it was like haunted because like some little girl died of like tuberculosis or something like upstairs. And it was like, yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on, but it was wonderful. It was each of the challenges were very challenging. God, it made me, there was challenges that made me scared. And like, I kind of like that. Like, trust me, if you make me nervous, I like that. I like the challenge. I like being tested. And you put me high up above water, that does kind of freak me out because I know enough from my trading that you hit the water wrong, it's like hitting concrete. And and so, but like I learned in that show when I was telling TJ at one point that I'm a slut or a whore because I'll do anything for money. Because the minute he would blow the horn, any fear I had, I just ran and did it. It disappeared. But it was fun, man. It was like, it was fun. It was intense. I mean, dude, there's a couple of those things that knocked the crap out of me. But I would say everything was fun. It was all the bad was like the fun bad, the fun challenging. And I don't have I had a great time there. I really had a great time. And that was a fun challenge. It was everything I wanted. And I met some really awesome people too. Like I said, Cara Maria, who I think is wonderful. Luke, who we really haven't seen back, but that was my guy. I love that guy. Abram, who's, you know, kind of been out of everybody that I've ever done the shows with, that guy that's just, I've stayed in contact with and have been friends with since. So I cherish those moments. I cherish those things that have happened. So that is I would say Cutthroat, start to finish, great experience. It was all the great things that the challenge could be. It was all the great things that they had made their legend on. And I got to experience that for at least one season. And I'm totally happy to have done it.
Awesome. So I want to move to the comedy world.
All right. Let's move to the comedy world.
All right. So I know you talked about Johnny Carson and Three Stooges earlier. I got to say, I'm a huge fan of Johnny Carson. And one of the reasons why it was Carson, for me, Carson, Letterman, Regis, Barbara Walters, Rosie O'Donnell, those five in the talk shows, those five really guided me to where I want to start this podcast.
Mm-hmm. I think they were I'm sorry, man. Like tonight's this current late night climate is, I don't like any of it. I don't even understand how any of them have jobs. That's kind of my thing. Like, I also think there's other influences in there, but I think there was a prestige and there was an element to the old late night that was like, it was so cool. You know, like you wanted to be on Carson. You know, like even comedians still talk about how awesome it was to be on Carson. David Letterman was hysterical, and he was unique. No one was doing the odd things he was doing, and they were so funny. And I remember growing up, my dad hated him, my mom loved him, and I kind of loved it because he did. He had a particular kind of sense of humor, but he took risks, and I loved it. It was
I was
like
very
Carson
fortunate.
had like that Carson had the sharp wit, man, and he could say it without saying it. Letterman was in a world of his own, and that's what made it great. I did love Conan. Conan was another one who came kind of out of nowhere. I think Jimmy Kimmel or Jimmy Fallon is. I just think they're all corporate now. I think they all they're a dancing puppet for who pays them instead of unique personalities that brought themselves to their show instead of tried to create a formula that was given to them by their bosses. So and Regis hilarious to me. Regis is just such a big personality. I'm glad you brought him up, but those are good old days, man.
Regis is one of my all-time. For me, he's always the king. He will always be the king of daytime television, in my opinion, and also especially Regis and Barbara, and even Letterman. Regis and Barbara, especially, they were before they retired in their 80s. It's just I want to have that lengthy career that they all had. I would love that.
That's what I always tell people. When I try to get discovered in comedy early, I'm like, listen, Rodney Dangerfield didn't get discovered until later on in his life, and he's iconic. So yeah, you can get discovered early and get your rewards in that early. But what do you want? Do you want to be remembered? Do you want to leave a huge mark in the industry, or do you just want to be famous? Because if you really love what you do, you don't want to just be famous. It's kind of a cheap thing. You want to shatter a glass ceiling. You want to leave your mark. And I think definitely, because Regis could do an interview where he could be funny, but he could also bring out the most interesting things of the person. And I also think Regis could interview the dullest person. Regis could have interviewed Vladimir Putin, and somehow out of the end of it, we would have found Putin charming. That's what Regis could do. That's why I think he has a gift. It's everyone you interview or anyone you work with, you want to make them look better. And I think those guys could do it better than anyone else. And those women could do it better than anyone else. That is why they're legendary. That's why they stood the test of time. So people kept wanting to watch them.
Yeah, I still do. To take notes. So, all righty. So stand up. So how long does it take you to create your set?
What do you mean? You always work at your set. You're always working at it. It's always, I have so many jokes that have come and gone because it just is either not current or I'm not there anymore, because I like my stand-up to be an extension of me, whether it is just idiotic thoughts or taking a basic thought and just me taking them to a completely moronic place, because that's my personality. I want it to seem as though it's a conversation. I want you to seem like you're having a conversation with me and I'm not taking things serious that I should be taking serious. That's what I'm trying to create. So as far as finding your material, building your material, you always do that. You're always adding, and you're always sometimes you're dropping because that either it was a time sensitive thing. You're bringing up something about something that was happening at that moment, but isn't anymore. Or you're just always wanting to jump on to the next thing, or you find out more about yourself. I think the more I get comfortable with myself, the more every joke that I come up with or everything that I'm talking about, it has to fit where I'm feeling at that time. So as if you're doing 30-minute set, or are you going to do 5-minute set? I can build 5 minutes pretty fast. If you give me now comedy, I've been doing comedy for over 10 years. And it's taken me that long to get to a point where I can be where I'm at now. Comfortable, knowing exactly how, you know what I mean? Making my comedy an extension of me instead of just trying to make people laugh off an absurd topic. And I think that's the big difference between green comics and the seasoned ones is you want to all the comics I grew up watching and all the comics that I worked with early on in my comedy career that I took that were kind of mentors to me was I watched how natural they made things. And you would talk to them, and then you'd watch them on stage, and you're like, that's the same guy. That's the same guy. Only what he's doing is he knows that he has a group of people that he just met for the first time. So he's inducing a conversation that's going to bring them into it faster. but they're basically getting to know him, even if it's an exaggerated or amplified version. He's introducing himself, and I think that the comics that people love the most are the people that they relate the most with, or that they like, the relation. Even if you don't think and act like Bill Burr, you may have an uncle or somebody that he reminds you of, and that's why like you love him, and you just do you think like him? Do you agree with everything he says? No, but part of him is relatable because he reminds you of something about your life or about someone you know. And I think when you're creating the key to creating a set is representing yourself in the funniest, quickest, lighthearted way, so that they get to know you the fastest. They can get you right away, and you're on a common ground. So I would say meet them where they are. Find a topic or find something that most people can find relation in, and then you give yourself in that topic. So for me to get to where I have a lot, I mean, it was a journey for 10 plus years, but as far as like the current stuff that I use now, like I'm gonna be honest with you, in Kansas City, most of what I said was things that I've literally thought of in the last couple of months.
Really?
So,
That's
yeah,
pretty
it
cool.
was a lot of it was very like new. Now, some of it was there's the tried and trues, definitely. But I mean, I think I wound up doing like 15 minutes of just talking about the show and then talking about the shampoo and that in my hotel room. And that was literally that morning. Was me taking a shower because I got in late the night before, and I got to take my shower, and I'm just reading the shampoo bottles and I'm laughing. Because I'm like, dude, this is a Hilton in Kansas City. Why is it in French? Who are they fooling? And then at the bottom it just says this works. And I'm like, what kind of, we literally are just giving jobs to anyone's nephew. Like at this point, that's where, and so it made me laugh so much that when I got to the show, I wanted to share that with everybody. It was like it was fresh in my head and I couldn't let it go. And there's two things, me making fun of how I reacted to the cold when it wasn't that cold. I had to make fun of myself. And then those shampoo bottles that just stood in my head. So it was like, right when I got up, I just wanted to talk to everybody about it. And then I was like looking at like my time. I'm like, oh yeah, it was 15 minutes. Like just literally 10 and 15 minutes of just, but and I didn't really get to all of the tried and true stuff that I like to talk about. But yeah, man, I don't know. Once you find who you are and you find your mission statement or what you want to show people with or your authenticity, I think you're going to build a set much faster. But I think that you learn that later on. And that's why guys like Louis C.K. and Bill Burr can come out with specials every year because they've found the button. They found their stream of consciousness that's the funniest, and they can just keep sharing it with people. But people forget these guys have been doing this for 30 years, 40 years to find that place. So I don't know, man. When you say how long does it take, I'd say 5 minutes. You want to give me 5? Like if someone's like, dude, I need 5 minutes, I need it clean, and I need it in like a month, I got you. I can do it. Will it be the most like in-depth stuff or the most like deep things? No, but now I can do it pretty quick. But at one point, man, it took me 5 years to have a good 5-minute set. So
5 years, that's incredible. And I remember watching a little bit of, before she passed away, Joan Rivers and her huge closet of jokes. Mm-hmm. That huge pile, alphabetical by topics. I was like, oh my God, I'm just in awe. And God bless Joan Rivers. I have one of my all-time favorites as well. But like, it's like so weird. Do you have the organizing system like that, or is it all by memory?
Here's the thing. I do, but then I've lost some too. Like I really have lost some. And like what was great about Joan Rivers is like Joan Rivers, like I really think that the pressure, she was really on the pressure burner because you're thinking this is a woman in a time when women weren't supposed. So I always, whenever people like whenever someone says, do you think, because I'm very critical of a lot of female comics, new ones, and people are like, oh, you just don't think women are funny. And I'm like, no. I think the funniest comedians of all time were women. And I think Carol Burnett and Joan Rivers are two examples of that, where they are funnier than most people on the and it is because they had to get into an industry where they didn't get the time. Like if I got in and I sucked, there was still like some kind of leeway and I could work my way back into. Whereas like if you were a woman and you stepped in, you sucked, you were buried right then. So they were going out there every single night being judged to the highest point. So you bet your ass they knew they had it down. And so by necessity, Joan had to really get her, like she had to take a combative stance on her material and her professionalism. And that's why you also gotta remember decades. We talk about longevity. So it's like, God, I bet you saw all of those. And that's, dude, she probably took that many she has forgotten. I had forgotten. I guarantee it. Because a mind that was as fast as hers Like, there's no way she would have held on to it. Because there's so many times when you're on the way. Okay, the shampoo thing. You're like in my example, my stupid shampoo thing. But like, you know how I forgot about that for like 3 days, and then something jarred it when I got back to LA, and I talked about it again. But it had come in and left. It was something that I wanted to use. So how many moments do you think over, 40, 50 years, Joan Rivers had things like that like came in and left? So yeah, she had a filing system, but like it didn't get everything. Mine now, I do have like a Google Drive where I kind of reference back, but I forget a lot of stuff. And sometimes like jokes pop up that I haven't used in years, and I don't know how. Like I had an old joke book that I wound up losing. And so I was like, damn it. And so there's about a good there was my first 20 minutes was in that book, and I guarantee I probably don't use any of those. So there's 20 minutes worth of jokes that I filed that are gone. So, you were asking me a question, and I ramble way too much. But essentially, man, like I do have a system. I have lost the system at times, and I've adapted. And I do have stuff now, but like I said, sometimes you look at it and you're like, this just isn't me anymore. So it sits there. So I always like keep a new file where it's like stuff that I'm working on now. Stuff that's working now, stuff that's relatable that I could bring up. So yeah, I do have a system. Do I have a Joan Rivers system? I don't think anyone has a Joan Rivers system. That lady was pretty unique. So
There was only one Joan Rivers, and it will never be replicated, never duplicated. One original woman that I missed her so much, and I can't believe it's almost been 10 years.
I know. She's my roommate. There's two things that me and my roommate love. Okay, no one will ever guess this on me when it comes to I love Joan Rivers, I love Carol Burnett, and I love Judy Garland. Right, like probably more than any straight man should ever love Judy Garland. But that is one of the most talented individuals. And what happened to her in her life is super tragic. But like when I look back at her movie, I go back and watch her movies and everything, and I'm like, talk about a person, and you talk about someone that's funny. Go back and watch Judy Garland on talk shows, whether it was Jack Parr or anything. She is funny, and she is quick. So it's like I hold her in that regard of like Joan Rivers, where I'm like, these ladies are like comedic talents that are, say they with Carol Burnett, their improv skills. And they don't have to cuss. They don't have to do any of that. They're like, they can be clean and hysterical, and they can be fast. And it's like, I hope to be that one day. I don't think I ever will be. Sometimes you just got to accept you'll never be Joan Rivers, Carol Burnett, or Judy Garland, especially if you're a guy named Dan Walsh.
Same, totally agree. So we got to start winding down our conversation, Dan. So let's talk. Last two questions. Are you ready?
Let's do it, and I'll stay right on. I'm going to do you a favor, and I'm going to stay right on them, and I'm not going to ramble this time. I'm going to show you I can learn, Jacob.
All righty. So Dan, first question. Where can my audience find tickets for your show and see your material? That's number one. Number two, where can they connect with you on social media?
You can go to Instagram for social media. Instagram at Dan Walsh 314. If you want to do the latest information on my stand-up, I have a website, danwalshcomedy.com. There are some clips on YouTube. I kind of keep my clips to a minimum, just because I want to give you like a little. You might see like some of the very similar 5 minutes. That's kind of like my teaser to you. But I want you to see me live. Like I want you to because I don't know. I like the unique, intimate experience. I don't want you to get the run of the mill that you see on the internet. I want you to see. I want it to be unique to you. But you can check out some of the material. I kind of switch up. I'll put little short clips in that either on Instagram or on my website. But I would say, yeah, for Instagram, it's Dan Walsh 314. For show dates and everything like that, I'll post them on Instagram, but also my website, danwalshcomedy.com. You go to show information. Usually I'll have ticket links as well as like information on shows on where I'm coming. So as soon as I get them booked, I put up the dates, addresses, everything, and then usually I'll have a ticket link that you can just click on and go right to it.
Awesome. So, guys, if you missed an episode of the Jake's Take with Jacob Elyachar podcast, visit our channels on Apple Podcasts, Deezer, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Podcast Addict, Spotify, and Spreaker. The Jake's Take with Jacob Elyachar podcast, JACOBELYACHAR. Now, are you on social media? Because I'm on social media too. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. It's Jacob Elyachar, JACOBELYACHAR. And guys, visit jakes-shake.com for more articles, including my interviews with Scott Yeager, Paulie Calafiore, and some of the people, and Dylan and Drew and all, and of course Paige. All of them are on jakes-shake.com. I am celebrating this August. Get ready for this, 12 years in this industry, and I'm very grateful for all that. So, guys, thank you so much for doing that. And Dan, oh my God, you were amazing. I truly enjoyed our conversation, and thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule to speak with me. I really appreciate it.
Well, let me tell you how professional you are and how much I appreciate that. The way you reached out, the way you were consistent, the way you were so informative. I apologize, and my schedule has been strange. Sadly, I'll get like I said, I have a confirmed date in April, and I will work up until that date. But as of right now, that's the only thing I have, and everything else will fall into place because I'm not really in a place where I can demand immediate bookings. But I appreciate you being patient, man. I really do. And I'm sorry if I rambled too much. I am a talker. I'm a talker, dude. So you get me on, but you're training me. If you ever have me on again, I will be dead on. I will just answer your questions. I will let you Barbara Walters me.
Awesome. I can't wait to do that. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time, have a great one, everybody. Goodbye.